AI, in the travel, here we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips in a snap with a simple chatbot flow. AI, revolutionizing how we roll. Gonna hop on a plane, feeling so.
Welcome to another episode of the Everything AI in Travel podcast, where we hear from the makers, shapers, and buyers of AI technology in the travel space. Here's your host, Tony Khan.
Hey everyone. Now, before we get started with today's show, I've got a very special guest with me who's got an event coming up later in the year that I think you should consider attending. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bruce Rassard from Arrival. How are you going?
Hey, thanks, Tony. Really appreciate the time. So Arrival, for those who aren't familiar with us, focuses on destination experiences, what you do when you get there on vacation. We all know that people don't go on trips to stay in a hotel or fly. They go to have fun when they get to destination. So that's what Arrival is all about. At our conference this year in Washington, D.C., September 29 to October 3rd, we actually have three different elements. First, we have our executive summit for the C-suite. Then the second day is our AI forum for destination experiences. It's the first of its kind. It's never happened. And we've got a great group of speakers that are going to be there to talk about the intermediate up to expert level of what people know about AI, not designed for beginners. We will have some sessions at Arrival 360, which follows the AI forum for more introductory AI.
Sounds really great, Bruce. Now, what can people expect to take away or learn from going to the AI specific part of the conference?
You know, at the AI conference, Tony, we're going to have high-level strategic discussions on our main stage, everything from agents and what's happening with that, the impact of AI on search and discovery, what you need to know from a regulatory and privacy perspective. That'll be on the main stage and more sessions like that. Some investors will be there sharing their perspective. And then we'll have breakout sessions where we're going to go deep again into search and discovery because we know how important that is. Agents, working with agents, and roll up your sleeves, bring your laptop, hour and a half long sessions on the tools. You know, we know what tools everyone's using today. By the time the event runs around in September, it'll be different. And we'll have roundtables with discussions for practical information. Here's some tools you need to start using today. By tomorrow, you can start using them.
Sounds super fantastic. I'm definitely going to be there. Where can people find out some more information?
Just go to arrival.travel and navigate your way to our Washington event. And you'll see subtitles for our executive summit and our AI forum and the rest of the conference that's going on that first week of October in DC.
Perfect. Now, there's a special offer for listeners of the Everything AI and Travel podcast, and you'll find that in the show notes. So if that sounded like something that you would like to attend, and I think you should, then go down to those show notes and grab that special offer, find out more about the conference and book yourself a ticket. Thanks for joining us today, Bruce.
Yeah, one last thing. It's Arrival with one R. For those of you listening, arrival.travel.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us, Bruce. And now on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Everything AI in Travel podcast. And this one I've been chasing for about a year. One of the OG women founders of AI technology usage in a travel business. Welcome to the show, Gabby Gonzalez-Bux. How are you going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Tony.
No worries. Now, your business is Tango. Maybe for those who don't know, that's probably a really good place to start. Tell us what it is that your business is doing and what problem that you're solving.
Sure. We build and book trips for what we call the mass affluent traveler. So think about them as people who are spending between $300 and $700 in hotels per night. That gives you a sense. And we focus on their more complex trips. So think of it as a trip that has more than one stop, one destination. So Japan, Morocco, Portugal, where you're likely to go for more than one city in a place that's new to you, different language, etc. So that's what we are. And we're in a way a blend of a marketplace and a travel agency using technology and still humans to service this population at scale.
Perfect. And so competitors in this space, like Origin springs to mind from the Netherlands. Is that kind of a good comparison?
I think so. You know, sometimes, and this is one of the things we need to work on is what are you and how do I say it in a word that people understand, right? And so I think what's interesting is we're at a time when things are kind of moving and reestablishing themselves for the first time, I think, in a long time in travel. And so these new categories are emerging. I think hyper-personalized commerce is a general bucket that we fit into, and Origin is part of that. In fact, they were former Stitch Fix or some of their team, and one of our first advisors is a former Stitch Fix for their algorithms. That industry, I think, gave us the idea of how do you still have a human in the loop where it matters, but use data to personalize and service a very specific audience. It's not budget and it's not high-end luxury.
Yeah, for sure. I recall when I first came across Origin, and this is pre-AI days, I jumped on and thought, oh, I'll have a look at see what this thing's all about. Looks pretty cool. And I think the first question they asked in their survey was, are you preparing to spend more than 35,000 euros on this trip? And I was like, yes or no? And I'm like, well, no.
Wow. So, okay, a few things. We don't ask that question. I actually think a lot of people in part, they don't really know what they're supposed to be spending.
Hmm.
So we can talk about that. We actually ask, what's your average spend per hotel desired? And we say average because in our population, they'll spend $200 and they'll spend $1,000. It all depends on what's in front of them. So it's a very value oriented. Our sweet spot, though, if you're looking at total booking value, is right under the $30,000, right? And so it's between 5 and 30,000. That's our audience and what we're going for. And it's because we believe it's an underserved part of the market. So if you're spending less than 5,000, there's so many places to go to have a great trip at that budget. And if you're at the 30,000, you have the whole travel advisor infrastructure that's very well developed. And you have wonderful professionals in that space that take care of you. In fact, our source of referrals are the individuals that go to these advisors, but they don't meet the minimum, right? And so that is kind of the place that we're playing at. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to that. I think there's not a lot of people actually playing in this specific space. I think that the scale part of it on how do you service efficiently, that's the unlock.
For
Right?
sure, for sure. And so you are B2C, because I think the first time I ever heard about Tango was probably through Gilad Berenstein and the Virtuoso conference. Maybe you might have attended that as one of the startups. So at that point, were you looking to service B2B, or do you still service B2B?
We don't service B2B. Places like Virtuoso are sources of leads for us. I think there is a place, though, when I think about the function that DMC does for a travel advisor. So, your specialty is your client, what they like. They want to travel to many places in the world. You can't be a specialist everywhere, right? And so one alternative is to go to the different DMCs. The other is there a place that you can go to? Because the way we service a trip doesn't require DMC. We basically, and we can talk about how we use AI, is how we curate our databases and how do we make very strong personalization. So from first inquiry to making your first decision happens very quickly, right? And that's where we shine. And when we showed our product at the Virtuoso Summit, you had a lot of advisors raise their hand and say, can I use it? Can I use it? Can I use it? Right? We haven't gone down that path. We're very close to a consumer or traveler. That's also, I think, what makes our product so strong. But that's not to say that there's not a place for that.
Yeah, for sure. And you've kind of opened the door there for me a little bit. And what this podcast is all about is everything AI and travel. And so you were, as I said, one of the OG founders in the AI plus travel space that I recall coming across. And so that's fascinating in itself. So like, what was it about generative AI that kind of caught your eye? Were you already solving this problem, or was it the advent of generative AI that kind of lit the bulb for you to solve a problem? Or how did that piece play out?
So it wasn't generative AI is making a splash, let me build this business. It's not how it worked out for us. I became obsessed with the problem, right? And so early in my career, for around 6 years, I had headed up the digital teams for Carnival Cruise Line, right? And so in that moment, my obsession was how can this traveler this cruiser have a wonderful experience with Carnival so that they come back? How do we get them to spend more money? And how do we also create these experiences in a way that's operationally cost effective? And I was looking at all this whole time at the journey perspective, right? So a cruise is a trip. You buy the cruise ticket, and after the ticket, that was my responsibility. What does that look like? And my title was guest experience and technology. But the reality is that in cruising, as you know, everybody is guest experience and hospitality. And so that title was there. But what brought me in the fold is because I was building all these systems, I was interacting with all these teams and defining what processes should look like, right? And I met my husband at Carnival. We got pregnant pretty quickly and then had the alarm that happens to a lot of people. It's like, we better travel because our world is about to change. And that's when we did a lot of trips. And I think that's where I said, stepping back, why is this so messy? Right? Why is it all over the place? Why am I using all these vendors? Why am I putting it together for a mediocre trip at the end? That's what started. It's like, I know you can have a beautiful digital interface. We built it at Carnival and the website and the app that I built on board. I know that we had the analytics to personalize because we used all these Excel spreadsheets, by the way, but we had this beautiful personalization where different offers and messages would go to different cruises to help them have a better experience. And that was overlaid in cruise, if you think about it, is a curated universe. These are the option sets you get to choose from, and I'm going to help you make a better choice so you can have a better vacation. So that's where the idea started percolating. I joined WeWork. I'm at a WeWork right now. I joined WeWork right after cruising. They were looking at how to improve the member experience and looked at that industry and said, okay, this could be a good person for us. But that idea was still there, right? And so WeWork was a wild ride. And so I came back to it as like, let me go and start tackling. And I think part of it is why I say the problem is you hear the traveler planners, AI travel planners. It was really about understanding why, right? If you dig deep, what's going on? What is the why? Why is this a problem? Understanding that problem, then solving what the ideal experience should be. And then how do you make it come to life, right? So the AI comes at the end on how do you make it come to life after you've kind of designed what that experience you think should be based on how you understand people make choices.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. So cruise is such an interesting kind of breeding ground for this concept because you arrive, you get on the boat, everyone's on the boat. Okay. And the boat's only going one way and you can't go a different way to what the boat is going until you get to the port.
So,
Of course,
so
you can
Tony,
do
I'm going to interrupt you
Yep.
as I'm interrupted because this is really important in the industry. You call it a ship.
For sure. I apologize
It's
to
a
everybody
sticking
from
point.
apologize to everybody in cruise that I know nothing about
Anyway, you
cruise.
get
But
go
so
ahead.
this is your definite man in the street version of what's going on in a cruise ship because
But go
I'm
ahead.
sure
Sorry.
actually
I'm
once you
just
get on that
laughing, but it's because it's like a joke. And anyway,
sure.
go ahead.
I'm sure once you get on the ship, there are infinite choices of what you can do throughout your day. There's restaurants that you can choose, there's entertainment options, and I'm sure you can personalize that quite a bit. So I'm not a cruiser, but you're in a very defined space. Whereas, if I recall correctly, you kind of started with Japan, as your test destination, and Japan or Tokyo, or getting from Tokyo to Kyoto and then moving way around Kyoto is very different to being on side a ship or on a shore excursion and then back to the ship. Like that's a very controlled environment. How have you found kind of being out in the wild and being able to curate and then make that happen on the ground, to the satisfaction of someone who's spending quite a decent chunk of money on this very personalized experience?
Sure. Let me clarify a little bit about how we charge, and then I'll go into that. So our travelers take on a survey. They pay for a plan. Our starter plan's 125. Based on that, that survey information goes all into our system, and a proposed itinerary comes into our dashboard where we have a local expert, local designer look at it, tweak it, and then create a custom trip shop for you. And so you have this itinerary, then you have a call where you select the itinerary, that one or another one, and then you can buy your hotel and your experiences one off. So you're not buying a full trip. You're actually at that point, it looks like an Expedia, only that the shop is smaller.
Yeah.
That's made for curation. So how do I translate? I think first, how people make choices, regardless of context, doesn't change that much, right? I think it's especially when you focus on a very specific traveler type, right? And what they care about. So that translates whether you're on a cruise or whether you're not, right? And it's how do you get complexity and make it simple? How do you find the choices that are right for them? How you get there is actually quite similar. When I see that the similarities is you have mentioned contained environment in cruising. Well, we have a contained environment in our database. We only recommend what's been curated, right? And so we built an algorithm where we look outside on all, say Japan, all the, trusted sources, media, influencers, local experts, and we have a trust score based on who they are that comes into our database. And so one hotel may have 3 different sources and they all have high trust. We triangulate that with Google reviews and we come up with an overall trust score, right? And so there's other elements that go into it, but we have a trust score. And if you're above a trust score, then you become recommended in our database. We also use AI to tag our database so that it matches how specifically we match the traveler with the choices, right? And so that's what allows us to have high trust in not only what we serve up, but that we're serving up the right things for the right individual. Does that
Gotcha.
make sense? And
Yeah, it
so
does. Yep.
the ship already gave it the curation. So at Carnival, I didn't have to worry about the trust score that was already made by the ships, but I did have to focus about, one of our design principles was design from 8 to 88, 8-year-olds and 88-year-olds, right? Am I sending the right people the right messages, right? And so then that is really about profiling. How do you profile? How, you can get very, just say, oh, there's 4 segments, and then you get granular and granular and granular until you get the hyper personalization that we're going for.
For sure, for sure. So
Design.
if we continue along the Japan theme, just so I can get it in my head, kind of how bespoke this can get, and you have a customer that is very invested in the manga world, for example, right? And they're going to Japan because they want to go to the home of where manga cartoons came from, and they want to go to the Ghibli Museum, and they want to like do that's their world, and then of course they want to have a Japan experience around that. How does Tango help that person? How can they find that level of personalization in the experience on the ground?
Sure. I think it starts, if you look at, we asked first, and this is like higher level than it's like, why? Why do you want to go? And that's actually not a trivial question, because when you go back to that, this is why it's fun, it's immersive or whatnot, that anchors how you make decisions. Because all of it boils down to we're really good at helping people make decisions, and that's what allows them to go quickly, right? We ask them why, we ask them what, and that's where we get the information around manga. And then we ask them their style, what's their pace, right? Because it's not just about manga. Do you want to pack it in or not? Are you a big planner? Are you not, right? Do you want to meet with others or not? Are you okay? We have a great question, which is, am I okay going off the beaten path, even if it means getting a little lost? Yes or no, right? And so those are the questions that we ask that allows us to say, the what aside, which is manga, how does this trip look like for this individual? There's also, I think, something that's lost in trip is that it's an experience to be designed. And there are design principles that apply to trips as an entity, right? So you start with an intent, which goes in front, but also how you pack it in. So how we usually do is we have a lot more experiences packed in at the beginning. Then we do a lot of the more silly things that stretch you in the middle. And then we leave the end of the trip fairly open for you to get lost in the right direction, the serendipity, right? So for someone who's looking for manga, it's around, okay, so what are the choices? But first, where do you want to go, right? So what are the places where you can have very unique experiences? How do we think about the days, how much space you have in each day? And then what are the things that you want to lock in? And what are the things that when you're there, you want to discover and get lost? And so we have a database, and if we see that we don't have enough, we go and seek out. And then for the next one, it's already ready.
Sure. Yeah. And might there be multiple local experts planning this trip for the person on the ground, or it goes to a single local expert and that's where the marketplace comes into play? Like you pick the right person from your marketplace that is the best to design the trip for this person.
So from our marketplace, it's more from the roster of a contract of people that we have working with us. We'll match them to the right person, and then it's one person, but that knowledge lives in our database for all this information, and we have kind of ways of trading knowledge, but they're usually assigned to one person.
For sure, for sure. And if we can kind of move on to the AI specific part of it, who is the AI helping? Is it helping the consumer? Is it helping the local expert on the ground? Is it the database in the middle that's feeding, as you said, like, so it could be a particular expert who may not be a manga expert, but the AI will surface the information from the database for them to make those choices correct for the customer. Is that kind of where the AI plays in, and how significant inside your business is the AI?
So it plays in at different places, and there's a roadmap where it'll continue to play, because I think every business, right, is being transformed by how you use these tools. The first one is in the curation. How do you have curation with confidence, right? And so how quickly we can identify places and the way that we score it and the way that we describe it, all of that, there's a role for AI. The second one is then the one that's helping the advisor and saying who is toning, what they like. They're not going to know everything, right? And sometimes you have people it's like, but I don't know all of Japan. Like, you don't need to know all of Japan.
Mm.
You need to be trustworthy, traveler focused, you have the right intention, and if you don't know, you ask. But that's what we're here for do. So it's helping them kind of know the person, know how to match the right items. And then for the other ones is that that's not where our trip ends, right? Then there's a booking, there's a logistics, there's a planning, and so we have all these little tests running on how to make the end-to-end process of servicing one traveler more efficient.
For sure. And are you merchant of record on those bookings? So they're booking with
On
you?
some of them, not all of them. So
Okay.
we have a blend model. We'd like to be more merchant of record for our bookings, kind of moving in that direction. But I think one of the things is for this traveler, you need to own the trip, and that means own all the experiences. And if you only limit your inventory to the things that make commission or the things that, then you can't offer everything, right? This is a traveler. We call this as like like the Lonely Planet traveler who now doesn't have time, has money, but they don't want to feel restricted, right? And so we see a trip as a portfolio approach, and the way that we make our economics work is we don't restrict. We look at it overall. So that allows us to be much more open in what we can include.
Indeed, indeed. Funnily enough, so I worked for Intrepid Travel for a long time, for 17 years. And my first job with Intrepid was out in the Middle East, actually as a tour guide, but then quickly moved into setting up the rest of the Middle East destinations over a 5-year period. And we also looked at the customer as a ex-Lonely Planet traveler. That was
Oh,
that's
really?
exactly who we were targeting. It was this person that went traveling in their early 20s with
Yeah,
their Lonely Planet guidebook, who now has a job, right, and
exactly.
only has 3 weeks or 4 weeks off a year, and they still want to feel that same type of travel, but they've got restrictions around them, and we wanted to make them not compromise on their experience. And so it's a very actually similar philosophy, but
Yeah.
maybe the old Lonely Planet travelers are spending a bit more money these days because
No, yeah, they have money now, but they
yeah,
still have that adventurous spirit. And if I look at the American travel market more broadly, there's a lot of indulgence seekers, a lot, but you still have the seeker, the adventure seeker, and you can kind of broadly put them in two buckets.
for sure.
And we're there. And so our traveler is hesitant to stay at an Airbnb, but they'll take an Airbnb experience.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I know also the US is both a huge market, but a notoriously difficult market to crack at scale. Like nobody really has done it in the adventure travel industry. And even, in the travel advisor scape, there's not really a go-to winner there. Yeah, which is why I guess the consortia of Virtuoso and Signature could probably do so well, because they do tie it up to some degree. But is that kind of where your main clientele focus is? You are kind of a US outbound operator. Is that kind of how you think about yourself?
So we've had actually a lot of travelers from other places. So we've had people from Turkey, from Singapore, Australia, actually. I think the psychographic is what compels them together. And that can be that you can see people like that in different places. But then you have the word of mouth network activated. And so we do have a lot of people in the West Coast. We have some in Chicago. We have the East, like the coast. They start kind of popping up. And so because like a lot of the sorts of our referrals are other travel advisors, we service whoever that happens to be.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. And scaling this geographically sounds hard to me. So as I said, I think you started in Japan. Like, what's your geographical reach look like now? And like, how difficult is it to find these trusted advisors on the ground? It must take a awesome amount of vetting to find, those really trustworthy people.
It is so in 5 markets, soon to be 7. So we haven't grown like crazy, like in part we didn't take VC money, which would put us in a different time frame and time scale, precisely because, and here's, I think, if we haven't talked about the technicalities of AI, but I think more broadly, trust is the most important thing for a company to be building right now. With all the changes that are happening in the world, building your trust and being a place that people can trust, a company people can trust, that's actually really valuable, right? And so if we go quickly and hire the wrong people and we jeopardize that. How we find people, it's been just, I don't, serendipitous networks of people, right? It's funny, one of our advisors, I kept seeing her name in all these articles that I've had really good insight on. And then I just DM'd her and she sent me other friends and she worked with us. And so it's become this kind of, we travel, we had a great guide that we loved. We talked to them. And so it just kind of been happening very organically in that way. Part of it is we've been building our backend systems to be as efficient as possible to make these jobs for them as easy as it can so we can retain them, right? At the price points that we're paying. And so it's been yeah.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. And are they so like the customer self-service the booking after the planning
No,
stage
we
is
book
done?
them.
Oh, you
We
booked
book.
them?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
they pay us the 125. We put together the itinerary. I mean, they self-service in that there's a trip shop, but they book through us. And
Right.
so most of our travelers then upgrade to our Explorer Plus plan and they pay $950, but they get $200 back if all their stays are booked through us. And that's where the day-to-day, we plan the day-to-day and we book all the experiences. We make sure we have their trains or whatnot connected. They have two more calls with us, one to sort out experiences and one that we call the trip walkthrough, which is right before they go on the trip to just go through the logistics.
For sure. And I think you kind of touched on it around the why question a little bit earlier, but I think nearly everyone I see in travel, like that's doing anything B2C, is trying to crack the messy middle, right? So inspiration at the top, it's kind of that's done. People are, there's content creators, there's Instagram, that we know what's happening there. And then at the bottom, people are booking stuff and you can make that reasonably easy because it's transactional. But it's this piece in the middle that is difficult. And you even said yourself, like people are using spreadsheets, right? People are going and using Google Docs and spreadsheets and tagging things on Google Maps, and they're pulling their own trip together in a very messy way. And there's a group of people out there that have said, well, we can solve that. Click a button. Okay, here's your itinerary.
Yeah,
And
but that's not us though.
no,
Yeah.
that's not you. No, no,
No,
exactly.
no.
I
Yeah.
and I like I have my own opinion about that model because like people want to have input into their decision
Yeah.
making travel, right? And so I think, and you've got a great graph, your problem slide that's up on some of your LinkedIn posts about the journey that people go on when they're booking. You're going through this entire booking process of a trip or planning a trip, and it's super involved, right? And information comes in at different
Yeah.
times, and you swap and
Yeah.
change. And I'm about to go on a trip on Monday, and our trip is not planned by any stretch of the imagination. We've got a few hotels booked and a couple of ideas and something in a WhatsApp group, and
Yeah.
like not been
Yeah.
doing this forever. So this is a great solution I see for the messy middle. Like if people
But
were,
I think the messy middle, I just want to, and it's interesting because I don't spend too much time kind of looking at travel industry information. But when people come to us, they know they want to go to Japan. They don't know anything else. They have some ideas from friends. And so we help them with making decisions at that end,
mm,
right? So then it's around, so where do you want to go? Where do you want to stay? We help them with those decisions. Then what do you want to do? Broadly, the big decisions, and then a short list for the small decisions that take you on the trip. But we book everything. So a lot of people ask me initially, what part of the journey are you tackling? And I'm like, that's not the right question. I'm tackling the whole journey for this specific audience, for this specific use case,
for sure,
right? And so that's where we see it this kind of this way. And that's why we charge up front the 125 is because then we don't have to rely on commission booking and just the booking, but that also allows us to own the trip. If we service that person the right way initially, we own the rest of the trip. And that's what our ambition is. So I don't know if maybe I'm messy middle. I think the way it's like, it's not just because we did at one point say, oh, we can have the spreadsheet, we can make it easier on people to do their self-planning. But we realized that's improving on already broken process, understanding why are we even there? It's
yeah.
because people have a hard time making choices. Why do have people a hard time making choices? Maybe I'm gonna ask you, Tony, where were you when the Macarena was on the airways? Do you remember?
That's a very good question. What year would that have been? Any idea?
That was like 30 years ago.
Okay, so I would have been probably traveling around Central America.
I was in a summer camp in Canada. That was a year Expedia and Booking came on the market, and that was the last time how we purchased travel changed, right?
Yeah,
That's introduced the OTAs in the marketplaces, right? And I think the problem before that, you'd go to brick and mortar. they ask you a few questions, they come back, and from their, 15 brochures, they give you three, and that was personalization. And the inspiration was how glossy and beautiful those brochures were. Very convenient, but you didn't feel like you had much choice in the pricing. You knew you weren't getting the best price. Expedia changed that, but in 30 years, I think what's happened is access to choice is great. Access to too much choice isn't. You don't then don't know who to trust because so much of money is going into marketing to tell you to buy this. You don't know who to trust. Personalization as travel is really hard more than any other category, as you know. Like some of my 5 closest friends, at one point we all had the exact same SUV. Like the exact same because we just had babies, and I laughed. I'm like, some marketer has her picture on a wall. And we all have the same car. I think 2 different colors amongst 5 people. We all travel completely different. One loves the resort and doesn't want to do anything and wants to take care of. The other one won't pay more than 250 a night, but will like dress to the nines and go to the best restaurant. Like personalization's hard to get it right. And so that's why friend recs don't always work. And then there's a design philosophy. So going to say is like, I think what's important backing up is why are we here? Why is it hard? Let's go back to that knowledge and that information, then design from that perspective.
Yeah, incredible. I find the subject just intensely fascinating. Yeah, and if I go back to my kind of Intrepid days and experience, the design of an Intrepid tour was to capture as many people without alienating many people, right? So it's like everybody wants to go and see these 3 things in this particular country. So they have to be in the itinerary. And then what else can we put in there that nobody else can do, that's hard to access, but has mass broad appeal? And so that was always like something around food, because everyone has to eat, or, cooking, or, visiting artisans, or whatever it happens to be. And that was how you build your trip. And like, I loved kind of how you expressed at the beginning, like, let's be busy at the start and then let's kind of slow it down and make it really slow at the end. We had all these kind of guidelines around how we build itineraries to force the least amount of compromise for somebody to go, actually, I don't have a lot of time, I don't know a lot, I trust these guys, it's going to be good, and then away we go. And it's a beautiful spot to be in, and they're still in it, and that business is like growing crazy fast, even though it's 35 years old. So like, I think if you can get into that process and build it out so that it's repetitive over and over, and you just take it that level deeper. And if, again, looking at Intrepid, they've actually just hired for somebody to take on bespoke, to do what they do, but at a more personalized level. And it's such a difficult thing to crack. And even though they have their own DMC network to lean on, etc. So it is a very difficult thing to crack. What's next for Tango?
It is a very difficult thing. Sometimes being naive is the best thing you can be. Otherwise, you wouldn't go down this path. It's more countries. And so I think it's seeing our model play out over more places and growing our network of referrals and testing other customer acquisition and strategies, but keep going.
For sure. And is the internal product changing? Is the machine inside your business changing often?
So the interfaces, we took a while to design what is the right interface for the traveler. And because the sweet spot is, and what's important for a business is from the moment that they pay to the moment that they say yes to the first booking, is how do you make that very tight, right? And so that's where we've designed and optimized what does that experience look like digitally from the traveler, because it's that they get a like personalized, beautiful brochure, and that's how they're making the decisions. What does that look like? And what does a dashboard look like so that the people that we hire, it's very easy for them, right? And they can learn really fast. And so that's where that's not changing. That's not changing anytime soon. What's changing is how smarter and smarter we are around what options we present in front and how more efficient we are in the booking and the back end and the management that makes all the small little logistic details that can make or break a trip, that can be very time consuming. How can we make that more efficient?
Yeah, for sure. And we're running out of time, but just a question, another thing that fascinates me, what's your network look like? So where you live and in the travel industry, and then women founders in the travel industry, and then women founders in AI in the travel industry. Is there a network? Do you have a network? Are there people that you can lean on, ask questions outside of just internally within your business?
So, I mean, we've gone to the Virtuoso Travel Week a few times. We have some good friends there and we learn a lot from them. I was part of Female Founders for Hospitality, and so that's been a great network. I've gone to Focusrite once or twice. But if that's something and this is something I know I put on my list for this year, go out and meet more people. I think we've been very focused on our traveler, on getting the product right. And so how do you build more network and more connections and more serendipity around the great people that are in this industry, which is part of the reason we came down this path.
Perfect, perfect. And if people have liked what they've heard from you today, if they want to reach out and learn more, what's the best place for them to find you?
Sure, they can email me, Gabby@tangotrips.com.
Perfect.
Or
Hey,
LinkedIn.
for sure, for sure. Gabby, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. Fascinating to find out about your business. Can't wait to see where it evolves to from here. Really appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks, Tony.
Perfect. That's it for another show, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Keep your eye out on the Spotify or Apple podcast. Make sure you subscribe there to make sure you are the first to hear the next one coming down the line. And we'll see you all for the next one. Bye for now.
AI, in the travel game we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips in a snap with a simple chat bot flow. AI, revolutionizing how we roll. Gonna